carried. Thank you very much. Okay, item 11. For a windrow. Pump stations. We love them.
So, Gardiners Road pump station. So, we have circulated the project closeout summary, and in that summary, I think we've included two new sections called the benefits and the lessons learned as well. So, I'll be open to questions on the report, but first I'll quickly go through the three key things of the regarding the project, the scope. So the scope basically for the Galton pump station was to drill 2 new wells and have a new pump station with a suction tank and diesel gensets, all complying to the latest requirements. But apart from that, there were 2 other sub-projects which was linked to this project. One is to secure the land for the pump station, and the other was to also to include the new water mains at Gardens pump station. So that's scope. In terms of time, we were supposed to complete the hand over the project by the end of June 2018. The entire construction work was completed by the end of May 2018, and we started testing in the last month. And however, during the test, during the test, we came up with some complication, which I will explain later. So the pump station was put online on the first week of July 2018. The main issue was 18. So the main issue was when we designed the pump station, we were targeting at a network pressure of 40 meters. That was about 3 years ago. Now, during the last 3 years, there were several pump stations being built, being upgraded, and the network pressure changed to 42 meters, but by 2 meters. So when we were testing and commissioning, we were not able to achieve the flow rate required because the pressure had changed. So instead of producing 360 cubic meters per hour, we were at 40 meters head. We were producing about 315 or so, but even then we still kept on pumping out the water. But this was a scope change which we only found out later on. We were thinking it's probably something to do with the pump station, but no. But the network pressure had changed. So during the months of July and August, we quickly upgraded the motor. So it was a minor change to be done. So we upgraded the motor. So now the pump station runs at a pressure much higher than, even higher than 42. So we completed the whole works in the end of August, practical completion. So the 1 year defects liability of the pump station ends at the end of this year. So the pump station has been operating since July last year, but in full capacity from the end of August last year. I just wanted to mention the scope as well. So because this pump station lies in the Gardiners pump station, so there was a bit of we had an issue on the form and functions. Normally pump stations are designed purely for function. However, because we were occupying a land, we were given a land by the Harewood, we had to apply some form. So you will see there's a bit of a design in the pump station. In terms of cost, yes, we were within our cost, because we didn't have to buy land, so we could give back some money back to the program. So scope, time, and cost, and quality, yes, we comply to all the quality requirements. So I'm quite willing to take up any questions you have for this from the report, please.
I'll start with one. So on page 61, you've got the main contract summary. So Fulton Hogan, tender award, final cost. So, and you've got the variations. So the variations you've got there include flow meters, stormwater pipe works, wellheads, upgrade, chlorine dosing. So they don't seem to me to be outrageous expectations, but clearly they were things you didn't consider in the contract, or why did you need those extra things and you hadn't had them in the original contract?
Yeah. Now, in terms of chlorine dosing, this was something which came on a bit later on. So so after the detailed design was completed, so we said, do we hold up the whole works because we wanted to complete the project by end of June? So we said, okay, while carrying on with the construction work, we will work on that. So there was something which was caught up very late in the project. The upgrade of electric motors, I just explained to you earlier that because there was a pressure change in the network, this came also nearly at the end of commissioning at the time.
So hold on, going back to the network pressure, so you say that the electric motors were what you had to put in to get the higher network pressure?
Yes.
And so in terms of when you put in this pump station, was there any discussion about what the network pressure might
Yes,
be,
there was. So we normally set a pressure target during the early design phase. So we did some data logging 3 years ago. So however, and during those 3 years, Grampian came into the picture, Burnside came into the picture, so they had tweaked up the flow to cater towards a more wider network. So because of the higher pressure, which the other pump station were pumping in, so this pump station had to also to force itself to the higher pressure.
But given, I mean, the point of these closeout reports is to consider information which came up during your project.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the huge replacement and new pump stations and wellheads across the city, is the network pressure issue now considered?
Yes, it is. It is. Now, at the moment, we're working with a new pump station, the Ben Array, and we're doing exactly this. So we are capturing one of the key lessons learned, because especially the pressure issues, and I think, as you're aware, we are now having different. We are creating new subzones with new pressure, so we are confirming this pressures much earlier. So for Ben Array, we spent about 2 months actually just trying to confirm what will be the pressure, what is the pressure now, what could be the pressure in the future, so that we can cater to this whole pressure changes. So this was something which we have taken to the new projects.
Okay. And in terms of the rerouting of cables, I mean, that's pretty standard practice. So are you saying that was something that came up once you'd started the project?
Yes. So we assume that it'll be quite a simple way forward. But because as we are putting windows and there were other flashing works, so we now think that we should have spent more time on that. So in all future projects which we are doing, we're creating this 3D work for the pump station, so we can easily see where all different equipment are located and different services are being planned for. So although it's a small item, it does take time, and it did take us some time to sort it out.
I mean, I would have thought, given the huge amount of cabling and piping around the city, that every single project would consider that up front and do the work before they start. Yes?
Yes, no? Yes. It was thought that this would...
That would be the case. In this instance, we're sort of starting to introduce BIM, so we're creating a retrospective BIM model for this pump station. Reasonably complex pump station, this one, perhaps as Mukia has said, we should have put more effort into identifying those clashes.
Tim?
Thank you. You can understand our concern because it's a 25% increase through variations. So what satisfaction can we have with regards to moving forward with other stations and other projects that we've got in this? Because 25% is, you
So
know,
is it 25 or it says
well,
13?
it's in variations is 515. The tender award was just under 4 million. So it's gone from just under 4 million to just under 4.
I think some of that came about from our loss of wellhead security and the extra effort we put into to make sure that we future-proof this for what we thought might be a change in the regulatory environment. So some of that, you know, around making sure that we had the right wellhead enclosures, chlorine dosing,
obviously,
those
but
sorts of things.
Yeah. So now there were the whole project had about 3 sub-projects. So there are 2 items over here: the flow meters and the wellhead enclosures, which were supposed to be included in the well contract. So we said, okay, maybe I think we should put it into this contract because it suits better. So the variations was, some of the variations was due to the move of the change of scope from one contract to the other, because it fit better with this contract. So, yeah. The next question is, and the answer to the next question is, yes, we have a detailed lessons learned register for pump station in general. So whatever we learn, we make changes here, which is carried out to our next pump station. So at the moment we're working on the Jeffreys pump station, we're working on the Benarary, and we're working on the new Sydenham. So all lessons learned, risk registers are carried from one project to the other project, and it is introduced at the early start of the project, saying these are the things which you went through. Let us review it and do things which we can do.
Yanni?
Issue, the flow meters and the upgrading of the electric motors. Given that we had a water supply strategy in 2009 that talked about these issues, I'm struggling to understand why they weren't put into this pump station upgrade or this new pump station being built.
So the, like I said, so the flow meters was a part of the project. But because it was part of the wells, so this is the pump station. There was another wells project, so we took it out from the wells project into this pump station work. So Fulton Hogan's scope of work, because the wells contract was done by another contractor, and so that's number one. And number two, on the network issue, we are still having a look, even now, of how we can match the various zones, how to make it most efficient. Do we increase the pressure, lower the pressure, and the pump station will have to match according to this new zones, because we, sorry.
So I guess what I'm really trying to understand is, how does the water supply strategy inform our capital expenditure around these projects? Because I think what I'm hearing is that there's a gap. We hadn't done the work, even though we had a strategy saying we would do the work, to inform what we needed as part of the contract.
No, so when the brief is provided for us to construct, the brief normally spells out what pressure, what flow rate, and why it's required. However, the currency of the brief sometimes needs to be checked. And so 3 years now, since we started this project about 4 years ago, since we started looking at the land, 4 years later, things change, so the network have changed. So it was perhaps now, one of the lessons learned is, before we go out for construction, we need to check the currency of the particular set of parameters, and has the parameters changed or not. And so I think that's one of our lessons learned.
Is there a lesson also to be learnt that when we have a strategy that says we're going to do something, we do it so that we get the better outcomes when we do the capital works? Because, I mean, all this should have been done as part of our water supply strategy, so that when we were building, I mean, that was 2009. That work was supposed to be done 2013, 14, 2013. And
We undertook pressure monitoring in the area to understand what the target pressure for this pump station would be. And in the intervening time, some upgrades were done in other areas. The strategy also includes us changing our zones into smaller areas, and that will impact on a number of pump stations going forward as well. So we will be changing a lot of pump stations to match the strategy. It's quite a complex dynamic model. It's not a conventional water system where you take it from a single source, pump it into a reservoir and have it flow down through a trunk main. Having 50 pump stations effectively pumping into a leaky, I won't call it a leaky network, but a network where water is coming off in almost exactly the same places that it's being produced from, is quite difficult to quantify.
I mean, that's fine. I guess the two other questions I had was in regards to, in the report, that there's not much mention of sustainability and resilience, and I think as a council, particularly with things like future insurability, for example, it would be quite good to get an understanding of those two issues. So I just wondered, in terms of the resilience of the design, was there anything in the design that you would have done to keep it functioning, in an event, an earthquake or loss of insurance, that would mean it was easier to repair?
Yes, we have. So,
It's got a gen set.
yeah. So in the detailed design report, the sustainability issue and the resilience is included actually. So that we could include, so we could include that in our report actually. There are, yeah.
Consider future insurability.
Yes. Okay.
If we've got budget sufficient to ensure that the resilience is built to a certain level, that means in an event we can continue to operate.
Yeah, it's certainly mentioned in the design report. It does have a generator set,
And also
and standby pumps as well.
and like also for earthquake issues as well.
Aaron?
Yeah, just got a couple of questions over function versus form. Completely understand the function side of this, but the form side I don't get. No one can see it.
Well, the form, I think if you look at the design of the pump station,
Yep.
so it's the pump station sits in the lower sticks reserve, and so it sits in that area where people walk from the airport all the way down to the.
Eventually, the source to see, but they're in the bush. They shouldn't be able to see.
This is something that our architectural people have provided for us. I can't comment on on how good or bad that form is,
Right.
but it's been reviewed and accepted.
Right. Okay. I'd have to question that going forward. It's like farmers don't get sheds and have them architecturally designed. And it's a pump station that's in. It's no longer a park. We've changed it to it's a working nursery. There's just no reason. And then the other one is, so for all the years that this pump station was there, that was a gravel road going in and out. And now we've put down asphalt. So the neighbours asked why we've asphalted this for the odd service vehicle to go in and out, which had worked on gravel for 50 years, but there's no asphalt footpath on Gardiners Road outside it for kids to walk and bike to school. They have to walk on the shoulder of the road in a 60k road. It's one of our only networks that doesn't connect up. So that was another question that came in, but why we asphalted this?
Well, for two reasons. Number one is now this particular road is a main access to the nursery, so there are lots of movement of cars.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then
Most
also,
nurseries use gravel.
well,
It's also a bit of a trade-off. Remember, a substantial amount of money got saved by placing this facility on the existing nursery site by not having to buy other land. So it was going to create extra traffic going in and out of the nursery, and it seemed a sensible thing to do because a lot of money is spent maintaining gravel driveways.
All right.
yeah, we were looking for land in this area and to put two wells, plus have a provision for a third future well, plus a pump station, and to have a land located in this area, it would cost us at least about $1.2 million to $1.3 million. And we spent about 6 to 8 months searching for a place where we can put all this infrastructure there together. However, so the nursery has been kind to us to allow us to use their facilities.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of surplus land there, and the council's owned this for decades, so it just kind of made perfect sense, and there's no need. Well, it wasn't being used. It was called a park, but it's got 8-foot gates around it, so no one goes in there. It's never. There's no budget for it to ever be a park, hence why it's no longer called a park.
Vote on it and move this on?
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for that report. Another mover to receive it. Move Jamie, seconded Mike. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour say aye. Aye, against